Welcome to Ty's Daily Market Briefing. I'm Ty Wong reporting from New York, and it is Friday, July 10th. What has President Trump said today? Been pretty quiet. Maybe he's still recovering from his trip to Turkey. But he writes, the Islamic Republic of Iran has asked us to continue talks. We have agreed to do so, but the United States has stated to them in no uncertain terms that the ceasefire is over. Thank you for your attention. This, I think, is a little bit of an off-ramp that he's offering. I don't know if they've actually asked for talks. Maybe they are continuing. Maybe they're not. But he said, in no uncertain terms, that the ceasefire is over. That means the U.S. can hit them, whenever they want. Now, why, all of a sudden it was, they did hit 3 ships, which is a big problem. They promised not to, but Trump's reaction this past, the latter end of this week has been actually quite strong and belligerent. And here's maybe the reason why. The Telegraph reports that Iran plotted to kill Trump, according to Israeli intelligence. Telegraph said Iran hatched a new plan to assassinate Donald Trump. Israel warned Washington. According to a source familiar with the matter, the warning came of a specific plot against Trump this week. And certainly in there, there were big banners about kill Trump, during Khamenei's funeral. Now, not everybody agrees with this. Other U.S. officials said the report may be an effort by Israel to sway the U.S. president's decision-making amid renewed fighting against Iran. So a direct plot to try to kill the president would be a major escalation. And he did talk about that. He said they want to take out the U.S. leader. Trump said, I'm on every list. I saw this morning. I'm on every single one of their lists. And so far, I guess I've been a little lucky, but maybe that doesn't last very long. What gives this additional credence is Trump has unveiled the new 747 Air Force One that the Qataris gave him, and it's been refurbished, beautiful airplane, a gift to the U.S. A lot of people complained about that, but I guess it is a gift to the U.S., not to Trump specifically. He actually didn't fly home from Turkey on that. He was forced to depart the NATO summit in Ankara on the old Air Force One instead of the new Qatari jet because of security fears. The belief is the newer plane is not equipped with the full security measures, including anti-missile missiles that the old one was. So this could very well explain why Trump's sudden anger and hitting against Iran, even though he doesn't want the war to continue because it's unpopular and it will get gas prices back up again. SK it started trading. The range so far has been 166 to 177. I think they were at 149. So open immediately higher up to 177. Now we're trading around 170. SK Hynix chairman was in an interview said demand will be exponentially growing in the future. And the reason there's a difference is, if you're a non-Korean investor, you're a U.S. investor, you can buy these, but switching them directly into South Korean stock is not clear whether, if you can do it one way and then if you can do it backwards. What that means is if the shares aren't easily fungible, that means you can change U.S. shares into Korean shares and vice versa, you might that U.S. shares might maintain a premium just because you can't buy in the Korean market, so you buy in the U.S. market. I'm actually slightly disappointed that we didn't get it a bit higher. I guess what we'll have to see is whether or not how fungible it is. I really thought there was a chance it could print 200, but it doesn't look like the excitement is there right now. I didn't get any of the IPO. I did buy a little some at 170 just to see how it goes. I think SK is a great company, great valuation. Portfolio manager Di Zhu at Thornburg Investment Management said, we're currently in this memory supercycle. Fundamentals are very strong, and SK is one of the highest quality pure play memory players globally. Samsung, Micron, the other ones. He adds, we have very strong visibility on the supply side because it takes at least 3 years to construct a fab or a fabrication plant. If the demand side holds up, we should see this memory shortage for at least another 2 years, if not 3. So only concern is you see weakness or softness in the demand side. That would be the key risk that derailed this memory party. So, Google is trying to do some tensor processing units. Meta is looking to make a chip themselves. But at the end of the day, are you going to be able to walk away from these big makers? And the bet is that you won't be able to. Taking a look at the oil, Brent is dipping again today, a little bit lower. Right back. We've had a big jump from over the past 3 days. Now it's slowly edging lower. Now, is it going to edge back down here? It might take a little time just to see if there's any more violence, if more ships start to get through. If more ships starts to get through, and there are some talks, there's no more violence, and I think you will start to slip lower again. Gasoline, after the sort of 3-day pop, gasoline and diesel are slowly creeping lower. Fuel prices up for the third straight day. The low has been $3.79. This is the national average. We're at $3.88 today. Could hit 4 before it's all said and done, because again, these go up much faster and on a little bit of a lag than they do come down. So looking at Korea, like we do every day now, because we're using them as an indicator of how the U.S. is going to trade. Up 2.5% from the previous close. Obviously we've had a significant correction. It had opened sharply higher, which is why this candle is red, even though it's up 2.5% today. Let's see how they react to the SK's opening trade in the U.S. Again, I would have thought we would have traded a little bit higher. So let's see how Korea opens after the weekend. S&P 500, fairly broad advance, basic materials, consumer, defensive. Not technology isn't leading it. It's up a little bit. Healthcare is down, but this chart actually looks pretty good. I mean, July may end up being with a little dip, may end up again being a very strong month for the stocks. S&P up 0.3%, and the Mag 7's up 1.25%. If we'll look at it on the next page. The Mag 7 has done very, very well so far in July. Bonds a little soft. You can see yields are a little higher. The dollar is unchanged. Metals are basically mixed. Not a lot of change here. And crypto is mostly higher. Bitcoin looks like it's well clear of the 60,000 area. We can build a base here and slowly creep higher. I think it would be good for crypto. So this Mag 7 is suddenly back in favor. Now I've mapped, this is the Mag 7 ETF, and it's really useful because it actually shows you how you get, how the Mag 7 themselves are performing. And this is XMAG. This defines ETFs as large caps without the Mag 7. And you can see here, on the big, on sort of the big Mag 7 sell-off, at this point, at the end of June, the 1 year performance, the Mag 7 was actually 10% below the non-Mag 7. And now it's come back even in the space of basically a week and a half. There's some folks who feel that the hyperscalers have been, unfairly sold off, and now they're getting bought because we're going to earnings season. And a lot of folks, including people at Franklin Templeton that I've been speaking to, think that the Mag 7, had been underperforming and, could have a very good rest of the summer. So could rally and continue to rally into the earnings. Axios reports the Fed task forces, and who's leading them have come out. And, I am very impressed. And I think Fed Chairman Warsh, I don't know how long he's going to get to serve. I mean, if it may only be 4 years if a Democrat gets into the office in 2028. But I'm pretty impressed so far. It looks like he wants to make real meaningful changes. 5 task forces, economists and business leaders. And what's important is they're really not part of the Fed. The Fed has been accused, I think rightly so, of basically being the Borg. They think their way and nothing else is acceptable. Well, there's a new guy, there's a new sheriff in town, and he wants to make some changes, and changes that we haven't seen probably in a generation. The task forces are small, only 3 very senior members each with support from Fed staff. And that's important because, basically, if you have 3 decision makers, you can come to a conclusion much faster than if you have like 7 or 10 people on it. You've got big names: Mark Andreessen, private equity guy, former head of Walmart, Doug McMillan, 3 former central bank heads, including Mervyn King of the Bank of England. Arminio Fraga is from Brazil. top economists, including Raj Chetty and Greg Mankey, who work for Bush. Chetty is really more of a sort of a liberal and more democratic. But what's good is he's really good on the data side. And one of the things that War said is, why are we sending out surveys by mail and getting 60% response? There's got to be a better way of doing this. And is there a better way that we can measure the economy so we can react better to it? It's a great idea. They're going to come back by the end of the year, which is lightning fast, basically, for the Fed. Now, we have to remember the task forces can only recommend the FOMC will have to vote and make make any changes. But this is really, I think, potentially a really big step forward for the Fed as an institution. I think that's good. This is interesting. Barron's reporting SpaceX. Musk said that SpaceX will be worth than the rest of Earth. He was responding to somebody who complained about how costly it was. And he said, you don't seem to understand that SpaceX will be worth more than the rest of Earth if we accomplish our goals. So what do most people think? SpaceX 135 was where they IPO, traded up as high as 227. Now it's trading around 150. So Raymond James has a long-term target, $800 a share. Citi's bull case, $900 a share, which would make SpaceX about $12 trillion. Morgan Stanley has a $300 price target, medium term, and a bull case of $600. Its bear case is $75, and that assumes that Starship doesn't get operational until 2029. The average price target, $240, so a lot of room from $150. Now, this is interesting. Wall Street sees estimates to $630 billion in sales by 2031 in 5 years' time, up from $39 billion expected this year. So that is, 20 times. Operating income is expected to be $340 billion from $1 billion. Well, you can do the math there. That's a lot of income if Elon, can do what the Wall Street thinks he can do. So now they will need some extra money, maybe $150 billion in extra financing to build out the orbital AI business. A lot of that depends on what their cash flow will be. If they're doing really well, they should be able to raise this, I think, without too much of a problem. So here's SpaceX. IPO only a month ago, the big, spike the first few days, and now it's sort of steadied around, sort of the 150, 170 range. Maybe it goes a little bit lower if there are any issues, but there's where we are now. So this really a thought piece rather than anything you can trade on. Ukraine's drones are now hitting Siberia and putting Russian energy assets in danger. So they hit Omsk, as we'll see on the next page. Omsk is 1,500 miles away from any Ukrainian-controlled territory. And, previously they only hit 1,000 miles away. Well, the drones have a maximum range of 2,100 miles. That means basically most of Russia, Western Russia, the middle of Siberia is hittable. Oil and gas industry in Western Siberia. The one thing is, because the farther you fly, the smaller warhead you have. So they're hitting them, but they're not doing as much damage. There's a lot more maybe psychological damage. People feel that, if production of gasoline has fallen by a quarter, causing lines and shortages and rationing, but, we're not sure how serious it is. One research guy says hitting Omsk may be the straw that broke the camel's back. The view, though, I think is it hurts, but it's not yet critical. And you need to be able to hit it with missiles, which deliver a lot more power. So here's Ukraine. Here's Omsk. That's 1,500 miles away. 2,100 miles. They can hit this liquefied natural gas plant up in the in the Arctic here. Now, a good point by Viktor Khodorkovsky, who was a former head of Yukos Oil in Russia before he was put in jail and then exiled. He said the parts of refineries have been hit by Ukrainian drones can usually be fixed within weeks or months. To truly hit them, you need major destroying the refineries, and then that situation will change radically. While we watch this, and if you're rooting for Ukraine against Russia, which most people are, just think that if Russia gets into real trouble, there's going to be a lot of danger because you cannot see Putin losing this war. So we're going to keep an eye on this story. Well, thank you so much for joining me this week. I'll see you again next week, and we have earnings.